This lecture is going to be on osmosis and diffusion, and while there is not a lot of different types of questions I can ask on this lecture, this is something I do not want anybody to skip because there is a lot of information in this PowerPoint that will help you out with your lecture class. So it's good to kind of see how these things work and kind of get some different examples to kind of help you understand how does water flow in the body, and how by just having concentration gradients on both sides of a membrane, how does diffusion work in the body. So let's get started. So filtration is pretty basic. Filtration is the same thing that you have at home, where you have a coffee, where you put grounds in a coffee filter. The coffee filter has small holes, the grounds are usually bigger. You put water in there and then things just move through them. So pretty much filters just work by, if you have a small hole and something is small enough to go through it, it filters out. This is what happens in capillaries, this is what happens in other parts of the body, just based off of if it's small, it can move through it. To do that, we have one process that's pretty special, and this is going to be simple diffusion. And simple diffusion is kind of nice, because simple diffusion just shows you that things move from where they're in a higher concentration to a lower concentration. Unfortunately, my face for the video is right here, but facilitated diffusion is just where there's a special receptor there that allows things to move from one side into the other side. So it's nice to kind of see that things just move down their concentration gradients. And here, this is just an ice cube. But sometimes it's easier to kind of use the example of a sugar cube. If you put a sugar cube in your coffee or tea, you'll see that it will start to dissolve. All that's happening is it's going from an area, the cube or the ice cube or the sugar cube, high concentration. And it diffuses down its concentration gradient to where there's less sugar or less cold temperature. And that's how diffusion works. It works down its concentration gradient. If it ever goes against its concentration gradient or up it, then you have to use energy to get it to go the other way. So you hear the terms passive diffusion. Passive diffusion means there's no energy. And here's that term right there, passive. You can see that if there's a channel, things just move through that channel. There's no energy there. They just have an ion channel there that just allows one particular ion to go through it. Here, in this type of diffusion, it can just pass directly through the cell membrane. But in both cases, they go from high concentration to low concentration. Some factors that will affect it. Temperature. If you have a hot cup of coffee versus a cold cup of coffee, which one is easier for you to add more sugar to? And yes, there's physics into it. So the higher the temperature, the more particles are going to vibrate and move, so they allow diffusion to occur faster. Molecular weight is just like your weight. The higher your weight is, the slower your move. The lower your weight is, the quicker it'll move. But on a molecular weight, it works in a very similar case, where the higher the molecular weight, the slower the molecules move because it takes more energy for them to do it. Also, the steepness of the concentration gradient. If you have so many molecules on one side, they will diffuse much quicker if it's higher and much lower. So think of your lungs. You breathe in oxygen. You're breathing in about 20% oxygen. You have about 3 to 4 to 5% oxygen in your lungs, depending on your body makeup and how efficient you use oxygen. But you have 20 to about 5. That steepness of the concentration gradient allows things to diffuse. Another way to think about it is put on perfume or cologne, and if you do one spray, yes, your room will smell eventually like that perfume or cologne. 20 sprays, your whole house is going to smell like cologne because it's moving from a very high concentration to a very low, so it'll spread out a lot quicker. Membrane surface area. So you'll hear about this in digestion, you'll hear about this in respiratory system, you'll hear about this even in AMP1, where if you have a larger surface area, you can have more permeability. If those surface area has larger holes, more things can pass through them. This is going to be you using a dip net to take out leaves in your pool. If you have large holes in that net, then more leaves will go through it and you'll have to do it a little bit more. So what we're getting at is osmosis. And osmosis is very tricky because osmosis deals with the movement of water. And one thing here, you can see a dotted line and you can see a membrane right there. This is going to be that selective permeable membrane that allows water to move back and forth, but not large solutes. Now, you can read this, and I'm not going to. But the easier way that I came up with this when I was taking this class was water will always move to the side where there's more solutes. So if you see solutes, you're always going to move to that side. So in this case, water is going to move to this side. Now it does bring up other points where if water moves to where there's more solutes, eventually that space can only hold so much thing. It becomes very, very pressurized. That's called hydrostatic pressure. How much water moves in there is called osmotic pressure. If you have a reverse osmosis machine, all you're doing is you're putting water into this side and you're pushing it through a semi-permeable membrane with pressure, and then you get clean water on the other side. One way to think about this is your blood vessel. If your blood vessel has a lot of solutes or salts, so you always heard having a lot of salt in your diet can lead to high blood pressure or hypertension. It is because water will move out of your tissues into your blood vessels, which will cause your blood vessels to bulge and become bigger, and that'll be creating high blood pressure. And it's all because of the movement of water, which is osmosis. Another thing to look at is how does your red blood cells, how are they affected by the solution? You can have a hypotonic solution, hypertonic solution, and an isotonic solution. Hyper, if you ever see a kid in the mall or at Target or wherever and they're acting kind of crazy, they're acting hyper. So they're acting more energetic than normally. And in here, hypertonic, it has more solutes in the solution than in the cell. Hypotonic has less solutes than the cell. And iso means same. So it has the same in and out. Now, your earlier thing I told you about, where water only moves to the side where there's more solutes. So if the hypertonic solution, it has a lot of solutes on one side, outside of the cell, and then on the inside of the cell, it has less, water is going to go to where there's more, which is going to cause the cell to shrink. If the solution has less and the cell has more, water is going to move to where there's more solutes, so it's going to make the cell swell or burst and die. In isotonic, you want it to remain the same. And this is an electron microscope that just shows you what's happening. Hypotonic, it swells up. Isotonic, it stays the same. Hypertonic, it's shrinking. All of that water is being removed. And this is kind of a little cartoon showing you this one being blown up, this one staying the same, and this one shrinking. So it gives you more of an animation to figure out what do the different solutions do to blood vessels or blood cells. And here you can see hypotonic, there's more solutes inside, so water moves in there. There's hypertonic solution, the solution has more solutes, so water moves out. And that concludes our lecture on osmosis and diffusion.